Hey, welcome back to 7 Steps to Smile. Today we're talking about why asking why isn't always the right move. We'll unpack what happens in our brains when we get stuck in why mode, when reflection turns into rumination, and how to shift from paralysis to progress using a simple framework that keeps your feet on the ground. Have you ever caught yourself spiraling in your own head, replaying a situation, trying to figure out why something happened over and over? Maybe it was a mistake at work. Maybe somebody said something that hurt. Maybe you said something. Maybe you just can't stop asking, why did this happen? Why me? Why again? Even if it feels like you're asking this to get to the root of a problem, to take action, sometimes the most productive thing that you can do isn't asking why, it's asking what now. But there's a reason that this is a problem. There's a reason that I made this episode. There's a reason why we ask why. Humans are natural pattern seekers. The question why is how we make sense of the chaos. It gives us agency. In this uncertain world that we live in, when we ask why, we feel like there must be an answer to the question because we're asking it. And if we keep looking for it, maybe we'll find it. It helps us feel like we have a choice over the direction that our lives go in, that we have some control over the uncertain parts. Cognitive psychology shows us that why activates an analytical self-referential network in the brain. This can be powerful for meaning making, but overuse of this part of our brain is tied to rumination and anxiety. It's basically like shining a flashlight into the forest. If you think of your mind as a forest, asking why is like shining a flashlight into this forest, and it helps you see what's there. But if you keep pointing it in the same direction at the same tree, you'll forget that there's a whole forest around you, that there's so much else. Over-focusing on why can become circular thinking. You become perseverating in these thoughts, and we mistake reflection for action. You're not solving the problem, you're just zooming in on it. Maybe you're thinking a lot about it, but it doesn't mean that you're doing anything about it. So it becomes this kind of trap. When does this happen? When does reflection turn into rumination? Because reflection is good. Self-reflection, it helps us find our way. It helps us change our perspective from being too critical. Maybe we're not being critical enough. But when does that turn into rumination? Maybe you make a mistake on some project, and instead of saying, what can I fix next time, you go down this rabbit hole of, why am I always like this? That doesn't help anybody. You just target your own insecurities, you bring up imagined problems, and nothing productive gets done. It actually just makes you feel worse, and you left worse off. I found this definition of rumination as a passive focus on one's distress and its possible causes and consequences. What I found interesting about this definition is that it went on to explain that rumination actually prolongs sadness and it reduces your problem-solving ability. So, overthinking is sort of like running on a treadmill. You burn a lot of energy. There's a lot of focus that you're putting on these problems, and you're just burning energy and attention, but you don't get anywhere. The thing is that the question why feels intelligent. It feels reflective, like you're doing something, like you're being productive, like you're trying to figure out what's the problem. But sometimes it's the mind's way of stalling. Sometimes you're too scared of what happens when you take the action, what you're giving up, what the consequences are, what happens if it goes wrong. And your brain tries to protect you by keeping you inactive. So if why isn't always helpful, then what should we ask instead? And when should we stop asking why? There's a time and place. There's a time and place for everything, and there's a time and place to ask yourself certain questions. When the wound is still fresh, asking why can pour salt into it. When you're in crisis mode, why doesn't ground you, it just keeps you in your head, going around and round in circles, leading to more rumination and anxiety. If you're standing in a burning building, that's not the time to ask who left the stove on. It's the time to find the exit. It's time to get the hell out of there. Here is where you pause. When you're in the heat of it, you pause the introspection and you ground yourself. With what and how, those are the questions that you need to pivot to. What needs my attention right now? And how do I move one step forward? When you're in the fire, focus on getting out, not writing a report on how it started. Because there's a danger. There's a danger of too much introspection. There's a danger of thinking too much about the same thing over and over again. And it's that we're not built for it. We get tired by overanalyzing, and that mental and emotional fatigue can lead us to some really dark places. Studies show that excessive self-focus directly correlates with higher rates of anxiety and depression. That means that too much inward focus on your own thoughts, focus on your own beliefs and feelings, narrows your perception. You're so focused on the inward that you get tunnel vision and you miss the external clues, the external stimuli and feedback that can actually help you. You get so focused on what's going wrong that you miss everything that's going right. And that just shifts your whole perspective and your whole mindset. And suddenly the whole world is painted a different color. It's like zooming so far into a painting that you can't see what's in the picture anymore. I've had moments where I thought I was self-aware, but I really was just mentally spiraling in circles. Like, I actually told people I'm one of the most self-aware people. I thought that I was one of the most self-aware people. But in actual fact, I wasn't. I mean, I didn't even know what I was feeling half the time. I didn't know. I couldn't label the emotions. How could I call myself self-aware? It was just that I was always thinking, I was always in my own head, ruminating, and it was one of the worst periods of my life. I was so anxious, I was so depressed. And the line between reflection and rumination is that paper thin. That line is called action. Thinking about swimming won't get you across the pool. You have to jump in, you have to dive in, and you have to start moving. So, what do? We've spoken about how it's so easy to get stuck in our heads, ruminating, going around in circles, asking why, when we really should be asking how and what. We've spoken about why it's a problem, why it's built into us, and what the problems associated with it are. I think a lot of people will find this relatable. But then what do? How do we move forward? Well, I've found this framework. A framework of 5 tools that you can use whenever you find yourself spiraling into this loop of why. The first is to pause and ground yourself. Notice when you're looping, label it. Say, I'm spiraling into why, or I'm spiraling. I'm sure that'll suffice. Breathe. Do grounding exercises. Or a sensory check-in, that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 sensory check-in. There's so many breathing exercises that are great. Box breathing really does help me a lot. 2, shift the question. Replace why with what and how. What is in my control right now? What can I do? What are the options available to me? How can I make a 1% improvement? How can I change one thing? How can I take my first step forward? Research shows that reframing the situation shifts the emotional response. Right? Asking what and how instead of why can shift you from analytical paralysis to action, to progress, to moving forward. And that makes you feel better. And that's important as well, because when you're not feeling good, it's much more difficult to do the right things. I've noticed that for me, and I think that's true for a lot of people. When you're feeling good, when you're feeling positive, it's much easier to do positive things. The third part of this framework is to reflect, but with timing. Schedule your reflection after the emotional wave has passed. Your brain is much more objective and less emotional after the event, post-arousal. You can't clean up a mirror while it's fogged up. You'll just end up making a mess, really. The fourth part of the framework is to act small, but think big. Know where you're going, big picture, right? But when you start trying to do too much all at once, you get overwhelmed and you end up not doing anything at all. So start with the micro actions: sending the email, taking the walk, apologizing, writing, rewriting, just sitting down and starting. It starts creating this momentum, and small wins create momentum that will break this analysis paralysis. As long as you get started, you can choose not to stop. As long as you get started, you can choose when to scale. If you don't start, then you're not doing anything. You're still staying stuck in your head. The fifth and last part of the framework is to ask a better question. Instead of, why did this happen to me? Ask, what is this trying to teach me? It shifts you from this negative emotional state of, oh no, the world's out to get me, nothing I do is ever right, to, what's the lesson in this? What can I take away from this? What did this experience teach me? How is my pain a tuition fee here? Right? And that's a much more powerful perspective to have, because now you're not reactive anymore. You're not thinking and imagining all the negative issues in your life and the negative issues in the world. You're trying to figure out, what can you do next? How can you pivot? Instead of asking, why can't I get this right? Ask, how can I make this easier next time? Be more generative and productive in your questions. Remember, a better life starts with better questions, and why isn't always one of them. What have we spoken about so far? We've gone over how the question why gives us meaning, but asking why too much steals from us. It steals our momentum. It steals our agency. It steals our happiness and our peace. We need to learn when to reflect and when to move. Asking why helps you understand your story. Yes, it helps you make the meaning, make the connections, and you understand your story a lot better. But asking what and how helps you progress the story. It helps you write the next chapter. It helps you move forward. This week, catch yourself when you're spiraling into why. Pause and shift to what now. Then, do one small thing that pulls you forward. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.